Okay, hey guys. So we're going to continue with some of our selection options and refinements here. So we've gone over the analog tools, the rectangular and elliptical marquee tool, and some of the more automatic ones like the quick selection and the magic wand tool. I didn't go too much into the lasso tool. I'm going to do that now. Honestly, I don't actually use these tools that much. I think the other tools work a bit cleaner there, but I've been holding off this select and mask feature just because I wanted you to get a handle on the quick selection and magic wand tools and just getting a feel for how they operate and how you can go about adding and taking away from selections. But sometimes when we have images like this that we need to get either cut out or whatnot, see, we have a lot of variables that are happening here that's where select and mask comes in really handy. But before I get into that, I'll just quickly go over the lasso tool just so we understand how it operates. So the first one here, the just regular lasso tool, this is just pretty much cut and dry. It's just gonna follow freehand wherever you select and make the selection. And here, wait, I'll just cut that, and it's pretty self-explanatory there. There's no edge detection or nothing automatic. It's just a really, really basic selection tool there. Polygonal lasso tool, it's the same exact thing, although this operates in straight lines, and you basically click to make your selections. And then when you get back to your starting point, you'll get that closed O right there that will complete that selection. And then same thing, I can hit V, and then I can cut and move things out. Let me there, Command D. And then the last one here, this one actually does the magnetic lasso tool. This one can be beneficial. This is kind of it's half automatic and half manual. So you're gonna have to move your cursor, but then Photoshop will essentially snap to what it thinks you're trying to get to. And you have some options up here. Anti-alias will keep things a little bit smoother, but then you can also choose a feathering, and the contrast is basically how much of a difference it's looking for. And then frequency here, I have that up pretty high, but that's the anchor points that it's going to drop. And here, let me just show you here. So I'm going to just click right here, and I'm going to just move up her shoulder, and you see that Photoshop is going to basically snap to what it thinks I'm selecting, and it'll put down those anchor points. But I'm just going to do the best I can here. And if you kind of mess up and you come way out or something like this, you can just come back over and just hit delete on those points. Oh, delete. And then you can just keep going. Now I'm not holding anything here. I made that first initial click, and now I'm just moving. But let me just show you that this can work. I mean, I'm obviously not able to get all of those strands of hair, but I'm just doing a rough cutout of her hair. I'll come back down her hand, and I will, okay, here we go. And let me just close this selection here just so you can see. So there's that circle. So that closed my selection there. So not very good. Not a very good selection at all, but this is where we can now get into our select and mask feature here. So that's just quickly the lasso tool there. Again, I think the other tools here, quick selection tool and magic wand tool, are probably going to be the ones that you use more. And then again, sometimes this magnetic lasso tool. So now, remember in the mock flyer, I kind of promised you I'd show you some easier ways to do some of these things. But if we take a look here, again, yeah, this selection's pretty bad, right? There's a lot of negative spaces. There's a lot of things that are going on here. So there's a few different things we can do now. So if we come up to select, I mean, there's other things that we can do in here. So for example, if I wanted to just, if I wanted to select everything but her, I mean, I could go to inverse or Shift Command I. That would then select everything but her. We see that the marching ants are on the sides now. And then I'm going to just Command Z and undo that, so it just goes back to selecting her. This color range option can be useful. This will bring up basically everything that's being selected right now by color. And then, oh, I have that fuzziness way up. But basically the way this would work is you would select a color in here and then adjust your sliders to where it's selecting more or less. Now, if it's in white, that means it's being selected. If it's black, it means it's not selected. So we can see that as I move this up here, once that background starts turning gray, if I hit OK here, right, we can see that it's picking out a lot of her, but it's not quite getting all these black areas that are in here. It's not quite getting those areas the way I'd like. So I could turn that way up higher and take a look here. It's still getting a lot of her, but this option might be more beneficial if you have more specific and tighter areas of color and contrast. But that is an option there for you to use. And then these plus or minus buttons here are adding or subtracting to your sample. So we could come down and pick another color. So I'm picking her skin tone now. And then you could adjust the fuzziness that way. And I can look at this on black or on white. For example, if I wanted to see what my selection would look like on a white background or a black background, or I can look at it with that Q quick mask selection as well. Okay. I'm just going to use my quick selection tool just so I can just quickly kind of get a selection here, and I'll just show you a couple other things before I get into select and mask. Okay, so I have my selection with her now. I can also come up to select and I can transform the selection. Now that's just like the free transform tool. However, I'm not changing the image, I'm just changing my selection. So we see I can, if I shrink that down, it's just my selection that changes there, right? So that is a feature that you can do. Okay. And then edit and quick mask, I did show you that last time, but again, there's the drop down menu here. And again, that's a Q there to jump back and forth from that. But okay, let's get into the fun stuff here. So now let's go into select and mask. Now the nice thing about select and mask is you actually, I'm going to Command D to lose my selection. You actually don't need a selection to go into it. You could jump right into select and mask. So let's go ahead and do that here. So I'm going to click on select and mask. And okay, so if your screen looks like this, don't worry, just come up to the top here, and in view mode, you have a lot of different views, and my transparency is all the way to 100, so I'm going to just bring that down to 50. Okay, so you should see something like this. Now, this is kind of a control setting that where you can start your selections off with a greater amount of control and tightness here. So these different view modes are helpful. This onion skin one is really nice because it basically kind of puts a semi-translucent onion skin, and whatever's coming through clear will be your selection. But they have the traditional, like they have the marching ants, they have the V, the quick overlay. The ones that I use a lot is K, right? That I'll often hit K, and I'll show you once we start getting the selection. But let's just start from here. We can see we have our tools on the side. We have our quick selection tool, refine edge, brush tool, lasso tool, hand tool, and then zoom. But again, remember we can command plus or minus for our zoom. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to use the quick selection tool, and I'm going to just try to cut her out as best I can, or at least just get some of this. Okay. So I'm just kind of moving around and letting Photoshop kind of pick out the elements that it thinks I'm trying to get. So that looks okay right there. And what we can do now, and here's what I mean by the different layers. So right now I'm on onion skin for O, But if I were to hit K, that tells me, that shows me a black and white version of what I'm selecting. And V, that will take me to that quick select, and then back to O again. And again, with the transparency, so if I'm on O, if I put this all the way up, that's blocking out basically everything that's not selected. I can't see it. So if I bring that down a little bit, now you can see here in the hair, right, where there's, I'll bring that in closer so you can see. So again, as I put that transparency up higher, we can see whatever's not selected gets more and more obscured. So this is nice to see because it lets you see what you're actually selecting. But here's the really nice thing. So we want to get all of her hair, and we want to make sure that the negative spaces are showing through too to make this a more seamless and believable cut. So let's go up to our brush right here, Refine Edge. And this is a pretty good size actually. And let's watch and see what happens right here. So if I notice, we can see kind of in the background, right? The hair right here is a bit, it's a bit hard to see, so it's not part of our selection. But if I'm just going to start here, and I'm just going to click, and I'm just going to drag up, and you can see Photoshop is thinking and it's working this stuff out, and I'm going slow here. I'm probably going slower than I need to be, but I'm just clicking and just dragging up through that contour edge, and we can see that hair is kind of snapping into view. And we're also getting some lightening up too, because Photoshop is recognizing all the little negative spaces in between. Even in some of the selection that I had already picked, it's picking out areas that are negative space, and it's allowing those to come through. So it's really, really helpful to have this tool. And again, if I want to see what my selection looks like, I can hit K, and then that takes me into a black and white version, so I can see, yeah, I'm getting everything that's white is the hair that I'm selecting, and we can see, the difference from my selection here to the selection here. And then hit O again, back to onion view, and again, these are all right here. But so again, if you were going to be putting your selection on a white background, you could select on white or on black, and that'll come up with a little bit of a gray there. And you can cycle through these marching ants if you want to see, what that traditional view would look like. But I would suggest this O and K, kind of going back and forth between those. But let's finish our selection here. So I'm just clicking, and I'm dragging through, and I'm just letting Photoshop do the thinking here, all the heavy lifting. So you can really get by with just making, for an image like this, or a complicated image that has a lot of, hair is kind of the biggest example I could think of, but that you could think of any image that might be challenging to cut out of a background, and this would be the way to do it. Okay, so so part of her bracelet here didn't get picked up, but again, I'm just clicking and I'm just dragging through. And let me zoom out here. And I'm going to hit K, and there we go. That's my selection. Now, the really nice thing here, so these things here, so you can, I was just doing all of that manually, but you could actually turn Smart Radius on, and you could adjust the slider here to, let's see if it'll do any more adjustments for me. So I'm going to hit K, so I'm in that black and white mode, and we can see that Refine Edge brush that I was just using did a pretty good job, but that's more useful for spot checking things, but I kind of just did it on the whole image there. But this radius detection here, edge detection, this is going to work the entire image here. So I'm kind of moving this around, and we can see that not much is changing from my selection. And then these global refinements, I really don't mess with these that much. If you're using that Refine Edge or the Refine brush up here, seems to be pretty good, but you can see what this will do, right? Smooth, we'll smooth things out. Feather will kind of come in and out of your selection a little bit, make it a bit of a softer transition. And then contrast as well. We'll kind of look for the areas that have more contrast between the pixels and eliminate those that have less. And then Shift Edge will add or take away from your selection as well. If I go left, I'm going to be cutting into my selection. And depending on what settings I've put here, feather and smooth, it could look good, or it could look bad if my settings up there aren't correct. And then as I go out, it's going to add, or if I go further to the right, it's going to add more and more to my selection. Again, kind of based off what these settings are telling it as well. But again, I don't particularly use these too much, but it's good to know how to further refine your selection. Let me go back to O here. And the really nice thing from this select and mask area that we're in now is once I've made my selection, this output to is really helpful. So I can now say, make it a new layer, make it a selection, make it a new layer with a layer mask. And we'll go into masks and layer masks a little bit after this video. But here I'm just going to put new layer. So when I hit OK, it copies it onto its own new layer. Pretty cool.